Thank you. Right, we've blocked out the sun, it's after lunch, right? A few people have got their coffee. I've been given the unenviable task of keeping everyone awake. But luckily, I've got a topic which everyone's fascinated about at the moment, which is AI, right? And hopefully if you're terrified, I'll make you a little bit less terrified. If you're a complete optimist, maybe I'll still give you reasons to be slightly terrified after the next 20 minutes. But what I do have is I think it's nearly 50 slides, 48 slides to go through in the next 25 minutes. So the after lunch session will be fast-paced, it will be inspirational, but most importantly, it'll give you hopefully a new way to think about AI. Because, right, perhaps some of you, when you think about what's coming down the track, right, this is your default reaction, right? You're thinking, Jesus, like how the hell am I going to cope with this? And that's with pretty good reason. Right, because they're just every day there seem to be new AI tools, new AI solutions, new AI startups coming out. I was amused. I met Neil at an event, I think it was late September we did this, and I've had this slide in my presentation. This is an AI-powered search engines for AI tools, right? So you go and you type what you want, and it will give you a list of like 30 different tools that will help you do it. When I had that presentation, I think I looked back, there were only 4,000, you can't really read the numbers here, but there were 4,000 AIs available in September. Now it's up to 12,153, right? So we are literally talking, hundreds of tools being released every week. So how do you make sense of this? And then we haven't even got to the kind of the existential risk, right, when it comes to AI. You've also got, many of you will remember this from last year, when the founders of all of these AI companies, Sam Altman from OpenAI, before he got fired, right, and Elon Musk, kind of wrote this public letter saying, we believe that mitigating the risk of extinction from AI should be a global priority alongside pandemics and nuclear wars. And you're thinking, well, that's great. So you're the guys building this, and this is what you think. Right? But then, of course, you've got other people in the space saying, no, they're all lying, it's fine, we should accelerate, right? We should, AI is going to save us, it's going to save the climate crisis, it's going to, longevity is just around the corner, et cetera, et cetera. So we're kind of left in this completely overwhelming sense, right? We need to go back to the guy with a bag, breathing heavily into it. This is kind of where we sit when it comes to AI. And this, I guess, is where I try and come in, because why would you listen to someone talk about AI who, by my own proclamation, I'm not an AI guy. I used to run a trend and innovation agency. But what I do have is I've got nearly 15 years experience of helping large organizations think about change. Think about, because look, AI is not the first waves of change that we've experienced, right? Think about the last decade, it's been pretty turbulent. Not just technological change, economic change, social change, political change. Right? Change is all around, it's kind of a truism, right? But I love this tweet when I have to show this picture of the Pope going viral that many of you may remember from last year, this AI-generated picture of a Pope. And Chrissy Teigen, this well-known futurist, she said, I thought the Pope's puffer jacket was real. I didn't give it a second thought. No way am I surviving the future of technology. Right? And that's kind of how many of us will feel, right? You'll feel just, where do I look in this world of constant, perpetual, relentless change? But instead, I want to take this presentation in a bit of a different direction for the next minute or so. Because there's a great quote. If you won't take it from me, you'll take it from one of the world's richest and most successful men, right? Jeff Bezos. This was before AI, or before this iteration of generative AI. Just before the pandemic, he was on a stage, it was a Future of Retail conference, and he was being interviewed by a journalist. And the journalist was saying, Jeff, what are you working on? Paint us a picture of retail in the next decade. How's it going to be different? And he stopped, and as you can see, he said, it's fascinating. I'm always asked this question. What's changing? What's going to be different? Tell us what's just around the corner that we don't know. He said, no one ever sits on stage and asks me the alternative question, which is what's not going to change. And he says, I put it to you that for me and my leadership team at Amazon, this question, what's not going to change, is far more interesting. Because he said, these are the things that we can build our business around for the next decade. He said, we know, without fail, that no customer is going to come up to us in 2035 and say, Jeff, love what you're working on at Amazon. Just wish you had higher prices and slower delivery times. Right? He said, everyone in the organization, we know that's never going to be true. So AI, big data, Internet of Things, facial recognition, computer vision, drone delivery, whatever it is, the technology will come and go. But if we use these technologies to better cater to people's basic human needs and wants that are important to our business, that we know will still be important to them in 10 years' time, that's when we can have confidence about leaning into the future. Right? And we saw that, in the pandemic, right? The world collapsed around us overnight. And what did we do? We rushed on Zoom because we wanted to connect with people. You wanted to have that human connection. And of course, when the world opens up, we rush back and we want to spend time in rooms like this, getting to know people, right? Getting out from behind our screens. Basic human desire to connect. Right? But there are hundreds of other basic human needs and wants that you and also by extension your customers will be serving for, your clients will be serving for their customers. Because this is really, if I want you to take one thing away from this presentation, it's that I hope that amid all the conversation around AI, it's actually the people who understand people will be the ones who win in the end. Right? If we give people what they want, and they'll still want in 2035 and 2045, that's how the way to think about these looming waves of technological change. But I've given you these two kind of halves of the model, right? On the one hand, everything's changing faster than ever. There's 12,000 AIs that you need an AI-powered search engine to navigate. But then on the other hand, nothing's changing. Just focus on the things that will still be there in 2035, 2045. So how do you bridge these two halves of the model? And this was what the first book I wrote was Trend-Driven Innovation. There you go, I'll save you from, I know you're all busy people, I'll save you from reading the 350 quite technical pages I wrote on how to watch trends. Because essentially the big idea at the heart of that book was that it's actually the very things that threaten to overwhelm us, the very things that have us clutching for that paper bag at the beginning. It's lucky it's a paper bag, isn't it? I didn't actually plan that. It's like I didn't pick a plastic bag. But anyway, paper bag. The very things that threaten to overwhelm us, the constant stream of innovations, new products and services from your competitors, new startups coming into the space. It's these innovations that actually provide the secret for anticipating what your customers and what your clients' customers will want next. And the reason why that is because I believe what we exist in, all of us, as customers, as people, as business professionals, we exist in what I've called an expectation economy. And what I mean by that is your customers' expectations, your expectations, all of our expectations are set by our experiences, set by the brands, businesses, providers that are raising the bar, that are creating best-in-class experiences. Right? What do I mean by that? Just take an example. Like, think back a decade or so ago, when you first got in an Uber. Think about the comparison between that and a normal car. Right? You just pull out your phone, you press a button, you don't have to describe where you are, the driver knows where you are, you can watch the car arrive, you can see the driver's rating, right? You're in the car, you can share your destination time with the person you're meeting, you've got that transparency. You arrive at your destination, you just get up and walk out. Right? It was a kind of a magical, digital, seamless, information transparent experience. Right? Think back, okay, again, a decade ago, you walk into a restaurant like Wagamama's. You have none of those experiences. Right? You're looking at the menu, you've got no idea which dishes are popular. You look at your waiter, you've got no idea if your waiter's any good, whether that's a 5-star waiter or a terrible waiter. You have no idea when your food's going to come, and then you come to get the bill and you're trying to split the bill. Right? A completely different experience. And of course that's changing today, right? Increasingly you've got digital ordering, right? And so that's really the point, is expectations will often start outside of your industry. But once a customer's expectation around information transparency, about seamless experience, about convenience when it comes to payment, once it starts in that transportation mobility space, it's not just going to sit in that nice industry box marked taxis. It's going to bleed across into other areas of their life. And so that's the innovation opportunity, to look at where brands and businesses in other sectors, in other markets, aimed at other demographics, are raising customer expectations around a basic human need and want that you serve, and think about how you can bring that back into your business. And so you very kindly introduced me. That was what I try and do in the book. Right, written 30 short chapters. Was incredibly lucky to spend 3 years basically talking to these incredible entrepreneurs who are building the future and creating brands and businesses that are raising people's expectations. And just a quick note on this. I hate, I'm introduced as a futurist often because it's a kind of convenient shorthand. I always love people, and we talk about this in the introduction of a book. We like to call ourselves reluctant futurists, right? And there's really two reasons for this. Number one, because kind of as we've seen with AI, you can't really predict the future. Anyone who tells you they can predict the future, I would argue, is lying. I said, even with AI, the people building AIs don't know where they're going to end up, right? They're having these huge fights over it, this huge split in the industry. But also there's another reason, right? Because I think outsourcing your thinking to people who look like me, and I love this. I put into DALL-E, the image generator, futurist thinking, and this is what it comes back with. Right? And I'm aware of the irony. I'm a white guy wearing glasses, dressed in black, right? And I'm kind of playing up to this. But this is our image. This is our collective image of a futurist, right? Someone who sits there kind of thinking about the future in this, like, quasi kind of wanky way with their glasses. And it's kind of, but it can't be, right? In this world, it cannot be thinking about the future just delegated to people like myself. Please do for the next half an hour, right? But please, the world is moving so fast, as we've seen. Everyone in your organization has to be not just thinking about the future, but engaging with it and helping to create it. And so that's what I hope as well, what the next 20 minutes or so, sharing some practical examples of where the future might be going. The point of this is not to say that everything I'm going to predict, everything I'm going to talk about is a prediction, right? Is suddenly you should rush out and use this platform or, copy this slavishly. But it's to think about, once I've shown you this example from a different industry, from a different sector, from a different part of the world, how do you think about something that you're working on in your business, right? How do you think about something that's important to your organization? Because ultimately, you are the ones that are going to have to create the future for the businesses that you run. Okay, it's a lot of theory. Hopefully after lunch, right, so 1:45, hopefully everyone's now thinking like, if not a futurist, a nowist. And so thinking about what's happening and how we can use that to seize the future. So let's get to it. AI, right? This is pretty much our default reaction when we read about AI, when we hear about AI already. Right, we've heard this, Tim said it's AI is going to replace people. This is the conventional wisdom. Now, I'm not so sure. I mean, it will replace some jobs, but I think we hear this again and again, this narrative, right? Elon Musk, when he was interviewed by Rishi Sunak at the back end of last year, AI is going to put an end to work, right? I mean, we've been hearing this prediction for 100 years when it comes to technology. But I think, and I'll talk you through this graph, so don't worry if you can't read it, there's probably another more likely picture. Right, and to do that, let's look back to history. So this is a graph about what happened when spreadsheets were introduced. Right, so these dotted lines here going up are VisiCalc, Lotus 123, and Excel. So three launch of three popular spreadsheet programs at the start of the 80s. Right, and what we see is this red line here is bookkeepers. Right, and they think, more and more people employing more and more bookkeepers. Spreadsheets come along almost instantly. The number of bookkeepers starts to fall. So it takes jobs. But what happens is we get this huge rise in number of accountants and auditors, and you can judge whether that's a good thing or not, right, depending on your point of view. And an even bigger, steeper rise in a job that the US government didn't even count as a job in 1980, which is management analysts and financial managers. And again, judge of whether you think that's a good thing or a bad thing. We've now got millions of financial analysts running around. But what did we do? We replaced a kind of very, low skill, essentially. I mean, not being the bookkeepers, completely low skill, but we traded up the value curve, right? Financial analysts, management analysts, auditors are higher paid, arguably higher interest, right? You're not just putting numbers in a ledger. And we're seeing already some really interesting examples of that. So this is a fascinating example from IKEA, right, bringing it up to the present day. IKEA, a couple of years ago, they launched an AI chatbot called Billy after their bookcase, their famous bookcase. And last year they announced that Billy is now handling, the AI version of Billy is now handling 50% of inbound inquiries to their customer service chat on the website. Half of them, right? When's my delivery coming? I've lost the instructions, kind of functional, boring stuff. So what did IKEA do? They've retrained 8,500 people that used to work in the call center, and they've turned them into kind of basic interior designers. So for £25, £30, you can have an hour-long call with this kind of remote interior design operator. I mean, if you pay a little bit more, I think it's about £120, you'll get a 3D visualization of your room. But after that 1 hour call, they'll give you a list of potential products that might be relevant to you based on your need. As I say, what's incredible, but in 2022, they did 1.3 billion euros of revenue through this. 3% of the total revenue of IKEA now go through this channel. Right? And they want to push this to 10% in the coming years. So again, think about this, right? They've unlocked a new business opportunity, right, by retraining their staff to a higher skilled example. So how will AI change the world of work? Right? As I said, I'm a nowist, so let's look at how it is already and some ideas then as we get into how it might change. And I think, look, the number one most obvious use case of AI for certainly white-collar workers, today already, right, but is only going to grow in the next couple of years, is AI co-pilots. Right? And if any of you use Microsoft 365, right, just a quick show of hand. Does anyone here have Copilot turned on in their Microsoft suite? Okay, so 2, 3 hands. So this is basically embedding an AI-powered Copilot into Word, Outlook, Excel. So you can just, Outlook, so you can use it to get first draft of emails. You can use it to query spreadsheets in natural language. Why is profitability dipping in Q4, et cetera, et cetera. Starting to roll out. But where this started from, it started in the programming world. So GitHub is a library where programmers can basically upload code and share it and pull down code, so they don't have to start from zero every project they're working on. It's kind of the world's largest shared repository of coding. It's one of the things that programmers use all the time. And they launched their GitHub Copilot. It's an AI-powered autocomplete, essentially, for programmers. And they found that now already, within 18 months of it being released, over 50% of code that is uploaded onto GitHub is AI generated. Right, so you can see how quickly this is moving into sectors. And they've done studies, right, that show that programmers using GitHub Copilot are faster, they're better, they finish tasks with a higher percentage of completion, they finish them faster, but they're also happier. Right, because they don't spend so much time doing the grunt work. They focus their time on the unique things, the elements of the programming code that are relevant to them specifically, not just creating a boring, press this button and open this box. Right? And we see this in industry after industry. And I could have picked any number of examples, but I just thought this relevant on some level to this audience. This is a platform called Upcodes, and it's about construction professionals, right? And it's a platform that's been around for 10 years or more, and they help real estate professionals in the US understand building regulations, right? Because obviously they're different every state, and where if you're building, a restaurant in one state, you're going to have different requirements from in another state. And they launched this Copilot, so that again, you just type in natural language, this is the building I'm building, how many drinking fountains are required, right? And it will say, in this state, here's the section of the, the building codes that detail your exact question. So a much richer, much more natural language search. So we see this again and again, right? This is kind of the most obvious use for white-collar workers. We will all have AI-powered co-pilots. Just help us do our job better and faster. And there was this amazing study that came out of Boston Consulting Group, and they did with Harvard University. They gave all of their consultants, right, highly paid, smart consultants, ChatGPT 4, right? So just the same ChatGPT that you can use if you go and log on online. They weren't using anything special, and they did this study, and they had the group of consultants that used AI, and the group of consultants that didn't. And again, they found that they completed tasks quicker. They did them faster. What was really interesting, and there's two key points that I want you to take away from this, right, is number one, right, the impact was far greater. I'll talk you through this graph so you don't need to worry about the numbers. The impact was far greater on the lowest skilled workers. It must be quite crushing if you're a Boston Consulting Group consultant to be lumped in the kind of a lower, underperforming group. But the bottom half skilled, so the least skilled consultants, saw a 43% increase in the quality of their work, whereas the top half skilled consultants only saw a 17% increase. Right? So that's the kind of exciting thing. And we intuitively know this. We're kind of with ChatGPT. Like if you're dyslexic and writing is a real problem for you, then that's an amazing tool to help you draft your emails. If you're already a great writer, it's not an amazing tool. It's not going to be that much better than you. But for you guys, to make it relevant, think about if you could upskill your worst employees and get them within touching distance of your best employees. That's why you should be excited about this technology, because it makes not so good people much better. But, and there's always a but, right? The risk of this technology, and this is what we're going to have to figure out as a kind of human race, or professional class, I guess. The other kind of key takeaway from this study is they put into the test, this analysis, this research of using AI, they put in a task that AI was really bad at, that AI made mistakes in. And this is where the problem lies. So the people who weren't using AI spotted it 85% of the time, right? They figured it out. They didn't make this mistake in the challenge. The people who were using AI only spotted that mistake 60% of the time, right? And they called it the falling asleep at the wheel problem. It's like sat-nav, right? If you just never learn how to read a map, like I'm probably guilty of, right? If your sat-nav goes down, you're in trouble, right? Because your skills atrophy. Now, you can correct this with a bit of training, and that's what they were talking about there, but that's probably too detailed. But the point is, we will use AI co-pilots. The big question that, as I said, we will have to figure out as workers, and you should be really mindful of as leaders, the skill is going to be working out with your team or helping ensure your team know when should we be using AI, when is AI really good at helping us do that better and faster, and when shouldn't we? When is that going to cause us to make mistakes? Okay, moving on. Couple of other ways that I think AI is going to transform the world of work and again, unlock opportunities for us. Right, so some of you may have seen this campaign from last year. Kind of went viral, and this was a construction job board putting this big, amazing ad saying, right, hey, ChatGPT, finish this building. No, not for us. Your skills are irreplaceable. And so there's this kind of expectation that AI is great for white-collar workers, but there's this whole swathe of the economy which is, more or less going to be less affected by certainly generative AI. And I think the point of what I'm going to show in the next couple of minutes is to say, be careful having that assumption, because what we're seeing is some really interesting innovations as AIs become able to store more and more data and being able to read not just text, but video and audio. We're going to see some really interesting products emerge. So this is an example of a product that just literally launched. I don't really need much sound, it's fine, I'll talk over this. This is some smart glasses which launched just a couple of weeks ago from this company called Brilliant Labs. And as you can see here, the idea is they embed a little sensor in the frame, a little camera in the frame. That means that when you look at things in a foreign language, when you look at objects, you'll be able to say, tell me what this is. Hey, ChatGPT, what am I looking at? Right? What's the nutritional information of this? And you can go to what this means for the world of work, right? A bit like HoloLens is already doing with augmented reality, but just embedded with generative AI capabilities. So you see this coming to the real world. Okay, Meta and Ray-Bans have also launched a pair of smart glasses where, again, they're beta testing, always having ChatGPT or an equivalent of it, being able to see what you are looking at. Tell me where I am. Tell me what I should do. Tell me what this says. And again, we're seeing this is just with vision and in glasses. This is another pendant from a company called Rewind, and this is about ambient computing. So this just records what you are what you're saying, what you're hearing all day. They've got some interesting ideas about privacy. And I should say, actually, if you're interested, I'm obviously going through very fast. If you're interested in any of these examples, I always say that the deck is yours afterwards, right? Feel free to distribute it. In the notes, I use really boring, unsexy PowerPoint because I know it's what everyone else uses. But in the notes to all of these slides, there's a link to the underlying company, more details, so you can go and check them out. Right? And in fact, that's what I'd urge you to do, is look out for the one or two examples that you just want to forward to one of your colleagues and say, this is really interesting. We should look into this. But back to the Rewind pendant. So this is a wearable pendant that will just record everything that you're seeing and hearing all day and enable you to essentially, search, query, like, oh, who was it who told me that? Or what did they say in that meeting? Again, privacy implications we can discuss. As I said, they've got some interesting ideas around privacy. But, it is coming, this technology. The ability to be able to do this is coming. And again, I just want to wrap this section by saying, we see this and it's easy. And I'm sure many of you will be sitting there already going to the dystopian ideas around what this might mean. What does it mean when computers can see the world around us and process that? Right? You get examples like this, which I thought was totally bizarre. Right? This is this company called Neurospot, and they're kind of selling this solution that will be able to monitor our employees and tell them, this is one of their examples, right? This isn't even like a customer kind of saying, what the hell is going on here? One of their examples saying, like, now you can track your employees. Right? I mean, I'd question, how do you know that someone standing chatting isn't working, right? You know, as we said, this is where often the magic happens, where you get an idea when you're speaking. But this technology is possible. So again, the thought I would leave you with is we hear so much about the dystopian use cases for these technologies. And look, there are many, and we can all agree that there are people who will use this badly. The question I would ask you is, if 2023 was all about text-based AI, 2024 and 2025 are going to be all about multimodal AI, which means being able to ingest audio, being able to ingest video, being able to process and think and be intelligent about, you know, the real world. How will that be used by the people in your team? Because it's coming. Okay, got two more quickly to run through with you very quickly. So, another thought, again, we always hear that AI is going to, like, if AI is doing all of the jobs that, you know, robots do, where does that leave humans? Well, humans, we're empathetic, aren't we? We're the only people who can display empathy. Well, that was true up until a couple of weeks ago when Google, they launched this medical chatbot. And so this was a kind of, you know, chatbot doctor that could essentially act like a GP, help you diagnose your health conditions. Now, what was astonishing is they run this in a blind study against human doctors, and they had professionals evaluate this. And the key point here is not only did the AI outperform humans on all of the metrics that they were assessing, the most interesting one was the one that it outperformed the humans the most on was on empathy. The patients on the other end of those text messages that were coming in from the doctors radically preferred the empathy and the tone of voice from the chatbot doctor. So there was a lot of discussion about how, oh my God, if even the humans, if we can't even have empathy as our superpower, like what is left for us? Right? But I would argue, you know, this was in a double-blind study done by text message, and that's not the way that we live our lives. Right? You know, whether it's in healthcare, like healthcare professionals, like healthcare is an emotive stance. When you're being broken bad news, right, you can have that delivered by text message from a robot. You're probably not going to want that, right? You're going to want to see someone, you know, holding your hand, right, and looking into your eyes. And actually, there's some really interesting startups in this space that are doing exactly that, right, using AI to augment human empathy. And so what this is a company in the US, and what it does, it sits in, it records the consultation from a doctor's consultation, and then it writes up the notes. And doctors love it because it turns a 10-minute task into a 90-second task, so it prevents clinician burnout. So for your employees, right, this helps remove the admin burden. But from a recipient point of view, patients love it because there's no jargon. These notes are written up in a human form. So I think there's a really interesting opportunity around using AI to augment human connections, right? And again, we're seeing this in example after example. This is an example from a video game platform where there's a huge problem with female gamers being harassed online when they play multiplayer games. And so again, different context, what this company is doing is they now use AI to scan the voice chat channels. And if people start throwing abuse, racist, sexist, you know, harassment, bullying language at the players they're playing against, it will flash up on a warning on their screen and say, you know, we're not going to send that voice message that you've just sent. And actually, do you want to think about what you're saying? And if you keep on saying it, you get kicked out of the game, right? But they've intercepted over 2 million accounts in the 4 or 5 months since they launched this. And again, you can see, bring us a parallel back to your own industry. Right? Think about how, you know, if all of your staff had a kind of AI empathy co-pilot, and when they were sending messages, could actually say, like, do you want to say this? Is there another way you could say this better? So again, the question I would ask you guys to think about is, you know, yes, we can all tell these doom stories about AI replacing people, but how can AI help people connect? Okay. The other amazing thing about AI that I just really want you to think about when you're thinking about these kind of quite tactical examples, but a bigger picture of how will AI change your innovation culture within your organization, is to think about how it's a democratizing technology. And what I mean by that is kind of, this is the cliched image when it comes to creativity, right? Kind of the Mad Men era. There was a bunch of creatives kind of in a highly paid advertising agency, and they smoked a lot and they drank a lot and they came up with a brilliant idea. But we kind of know that that's not really the truth, do we? Because the truth is that people closest to the problem are often going to be the people with the solutions. But it's hard to get people to give you those solutions, right? Because they feel embarrassed by them or whatever. You're not empowered to bring those solutions to the table. And that's where I think AI is really exciting. So again, another example from video games, because again, this is where a lot of this stuff is starting. So Roblox is a video game platform where the players can create little micro games. Right, and it's kind of, if you want to see where the future is happening, look to this kind of platform, because it has 65 million daily active users. Over half of them, or nearly half of them, are under 13. So for those of you who have kids, they're probably playing Roblox or Minecraft, right? But what this is this Roblox, you still have to kind of code the games, and it's a simplified coding language. But last summer they announced this coding assistant, right? You can now have just an ability to chat to the game and say, I want to create a game in some ruins, right? Give me some trees. I want the boss to look like a giant lion, right? Give it a spacesuit as a skin, right? You'd need no skills to do this. And the point I make with this example is, think about the next generation are just going to have this complete expectation that anything they think they want to create, they can bring into reality. Right, or certainly digital reality. So collapsing the gap between idea and execution is going to be one of the most empowering things that AI brings us. And we see that in a much more professional context, right? Let's take it away from video games and kids creating monsters in the forests. To Shell, every year for the last few years, they've run this sustainable energy hackathon. And they've seen just an exponential increase in the number of applications this year. So this year they had over 10,000 applications for they had a hackathon around how to use agricultural waste for energy, right? How you might be able to better engage that. And we had 10,000 submissions from all over the world, from teams all over the world, students, just interested professionals, because AI is increasing people's ability to be able to kind of get their first draft into existence. And so what I would argue to think about is we're moving into a world where, innovation is going to be more and more bottom up, right? How can you as a leader encourage your teams, encourage your employees, or work with your customers to enable people to have a go, to suggest things, to use AI to bring these first drafts to the table, and then work out how you can develop them. Okay, final one. I think how am I doing for time? Okay, very quickly. I told you I'm going to run through lots of slides. Look, I've already alluded to this as well. We're saying, the future of AI is not going to just be chatbots and people sitting at screens typing in, little sentences and prompt engineering. The future of AI is going to be in the real world, right? And we're seeing this already happening. Like the first few weeks of the year have been like it was with chatbots last year. We're seeing just an astonishing number of companies every week releasing these amazing demos of how robots are getting smarter, faster. So this is a robot here. You can see it's making a cup of coffee using one of these like Nespresso Keurig coffee machines. The really interesting thing about this, again, talking about AI being able to process audio-visual images, they didn't program this robot. They showed an algorithm 10 hours of humans using these coffee machines. Watch how we do it and then learn how to copy it. So that is where robotics is heading. Right? Democratized, accessible, really interesting. And look, again, we instantly everyone's heads are going towards the dystopian angle on this, right? I mean, what headline from BBC, right? Amazon trialing robots to free up staff, right? Okay, or reduce them, right? Eliminate them. But I just wanted to leave you my final example in this session. Just wanted to leave you an example of an alternative future, because there's this amazing cafe in Shanghai, and it's called Ratio, right? And you can see in the background here, this is a kind of robotic arm barista, and it makes cocktails and it makes coffee. And the reason why it's called Ratio, this cafe, is the idea that you have an app and you can kind of select your perfect blend of coffee. You can have 28% of coffee from this part of the world and 17% of coffee from this part of the world, and my milk done for 33.4 seconds, right? and you get this kind of supposedly a better coffee than a human could ever make. Okay, and look, let's not pretend there won't be cafes, just like we have vending machines, that just have the robotic barista, right, and eliminate all human interaction, because there will be. In certain contexts, that will make sense. But what this coffee company did, Ratio, is they said, yeah, we'll take the people out from making the coffee, because we make it, not very well, not very consistently every time. We leave the making to the robots, and we bring the people out, and we have like a coffee sommelier who talks you through, because most of us don't actually know we're sliding the ratios on the app, and we're saying, I want my coffee to like that. You don't really know what that means. So they said, let's use a really well-trained human to think about how we can improve the customer experience, right? And how we can change that experience of buying a coffee into something that's richer and more exciting for you. And okay, I'm not saying everyone is going to have robotic coffee makers in your business, but I'm saying, right, when you think about the future, yes, the old cliche is that robots will take the dangerous, dirty, and the dull jobs for humans, and that will be the case. But I'd also love you to think about that example and think about what other new jobs, if some of those, if some of the existing tasks are being done by robots, where could you bring humans into the equation to create a better customer experience in what you offer? Okay, that was just the tip of the iceberg. I've raced through, as I said, about 25 examples, nearly 40 slides. Look, it's just the tip of the iceberg. I could have picked any number of trends, any number of examples to share with you here this afternoon. But what I hope I've given you, right, as well as some kind of, funny videos of robots making cups of coffee, is a different way of seeing the world. A way of seeing the world that says, yes, the pace of change is not going to slow down. We are going to feel increasingly overwhelmed. But if you remembered, it's actually these very things that are making you feel so overwhelmed, the constant barrage of new products and services, new competition. But if you think about how to look at these innovations, think about how they might raise customer expectations around a basic human need or want that's still going to be important to your customers in 10 years' time, then that will give you a way of thinking about the future. Because the truth is, the reason why I refer to myself as a nowist and not a futurist, is the only future we can make is the one that we're able to imagine. And it doesn't all have to be flying cars and sci-fi robots. It can be looking at the things that are already around us today and using them for inspiration about what you can use next. So with that, thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Neil. Thank you, Tim. And thank you. Good luck, everyone. Thank you.